This episode is brought to you by Bruno Mars and Travis McCoy and their inspirational quote, "I wanna be a billionaire so fucking bad. Buy all of the things I never had. I wanna be on the cover of Forbes magazine, smiling next to Oprah and the Queen."
Welcome to the Stephan Dyer Podcast, my people.
Hello, my people! Welcome to the Stephan Dyer Podcast, where I welcome people with remarkable stories for amazingly vulnerable conversations. I am Stephan Dyer, former banker turned comedian and lifestyle entrepreneur, and this episode with Maricel Saenz was jaw-dropping, my people. To see a fellow Costa Rican succeed in Canada, in the US, killing it in San Francisco, for me, it was just really, really beautiful to watch. Maricel Saenz is the sole founder and CEO of Compound Foods, which is sustainably producing the world's first beanless coffee. I want to repeat that because it's pretty impressive. The world's first beanless coffee. Well, what do you mean? What is this? Well, what is Compound Foods? Compound Foods is a food tech startup focused on creating coffee without coffee beans through precision fermentation. As the yield and quality of coffee are affected by the increases in temperature around the world and unpredictable weather conditions, Maricel Saenz aims to create future-proof coffee better for the planet. Though the company is still pre-revenue, Maricel has managed to raise $5.3 million, ladies and gentlemen, and she was recently named in Forbes 30 under 30 for social impact. How impressive is that? Forbes 30 under 30, social impact. That is huge. I can't believe it. When I spoke this interview, it was really clear why she's accomplished everything she's accomplished. I love that she's just as humble, captivating, charismatic as always. Since I met her 5 years ago, she hasn't changed a bit, and I'm so happy for her success. If you like this episode, share it, give us a review, screenshot it on your Instagram stories, and tag us because we love it at Stephan Dyer and at Maricel Saenz on Instagram, on LinkedIn, everywhere and anywhere. Ladies and gentlemen, she is a Forbes 30 under 30 recipient for social impact. She's smart. She's charismatic. Enjoy this episode with Maricel Saenz like I know you will. In 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Stephan Dyer Podcast. I have here the unbreakable, the unmistakable, the highly capable, tackling incredible, amazing problems all over the world, the legendary Maricel Saenz. How are you, my friend?
Hi, Stephan. I'm great. How are you?
Very good. Very good. We were just talking behind the scenes, and I wanted to ask you, but I didn't because I wanted to ask you live. Do you remember how we met and how we got to connect? Because I feel we have a lot of friends in common from Costa Rica, where we're both from, but I don't remember how we connected and met in person.
So what I remember is when I was living in Toronto, I went to one of your shows, but I don't know if we'd connected before and you were like, hey, I'm having a show, come, or if I was just fangirling and I was like, there's a Costa Rican doing stand-up comedy and just showed up. And I have a feeling that it's the second one.
That's insane. I don't remember what happened. Do you remember what show that was? Because I remember seeing pictures of a show and you were there.
Yeah. I sat at the front row. I went alone. I used to do so. That was so fun back in the day. But yeah, I don't remember what show it was. I remember it was funny. But
I'm happy it was funny.
That's about it. Yeah.
Well, amazing.
It was a bar. Yeah.
Yeah, it was at a bar downtown Toronto, probably 120 Church, which doesn't exist anymore because of the pandemic.
Really?
Pretty sad about that. But still had 5 amazing years there. And I was going over your Instagram, the Compound Foods Instagram, your LinkedIn, the articles that have been written about you and Compound. And before we jump into the coffee chat, I want to ask you, you're one of those really exciting people on Instagram that I always want to know what they're up to. It feels like one day you're just going to be like, hey guys, excited because tomorrow I'm going to space. So exciting, so brilliant. But the thing that really gets me is it's not like a bragging. You're just like matter of fact, changing the world. And I really, really thought, where did Maricel come from? She's conquering everything. So the first question is, can you summarize the last 15 years in 2 minutes? Like high school in Costa Rica, university, jobs, cities, because you've been all over the place. Why Toronto and why now San Francisco?
Yeah, and I miss Toronto. And it's funny because social media is very tricky for me because I struggle with that thing. It's like, I want to share because I feel like it could be like so cool for so many people to know what we're up to. But at the same time, I really don't want to brag. So it's kind of like, it's really hard for me to like share. And I have a lot of people telling like, if you do it honestly, like it will be fine. So I'm going to try to share more because it's fun and it's interesting. And I think hopefully we can bring more people along the journey. But here it goes. Born and raised in Costa Rica. I'm actually half Panamanian, so 50-50. I actually decided I thought I was going to be a lawyer. So I went to La Universidad de Costa Rica, UCR, for 6 months, right after high school, because everyone told me I was so good with words, I could be a lawyer. And then I was there and I was like, holy, I don't like this. I am not happy. I hadn't really applied to a ton of schools. Like UBC recruits really hard at my high school. And I had like applied out of a whim. And I literally told my parents, was like, I can go for a year. If I hate it, I'll come back. But I feel like I just need to go and try something different. So I ended up at UBC and I had applied to it because it was like the warmer side of Canada. And at the time I really didn't want to come to the States. So it wasn't like a very like thoughtful process of like UBC because it's like, you know, it was more like Canada, warmer. It looks amazing. I showed up in Vancouver for the first time in my life. I'd never been to Canada. And I always remember this, that I did like the international orientation and the guy like walks me to my room at the dorm and he turns around and he says, welcome home, and leaves. And I was like, what the hell did I just do? It was like a really, like, I still remember that moment. And I remember I played my País and went to bed and I was like, I'm here, you know, let's go through. So I went to UBC and I was there for 4 years studying business. So I initially thought I was going to do international business and then got really enamored with entrepreneurship. So I discovered during my time at UBC what social entrepreneurship was. During the summers, I spent 1 summer in South Africa working with entrepreneurs and how do we use entrepreneurship as a tool to get them to have their own businesses so they weren't depending on the mine. And then I also went to Cambodia with the same program in my university to try to help women create their own livelihood by doing like homestead food production. And this whole time I was like, if we can create businesses that are sustainable and that are solving a social cause, it's way better than charity, right? It's like giving financial aid doesn't really work, but you invest in people, invest in problems, then they're motivated to solve them and you make it a way more sustainable way to continuously solve that problem. So during that time at the university, I was like, this is what I want to do. You know, it felt like my thing. In my last year, I did a class. I don't know if I'm doing 2 minutes, but
no, you're good. You're good. Continue.
It was like a year long and you put together 3 engineers and 3 business students to create a business. And we started working on developing wearable technology for children with autism and how we could use these tools to predict anxiety. We worked on it for a year. We won business competitions. And I was like, I want to be an entrepreneur, but I'm not ready. I was like 22 and I was like, I have no idea how the real world actually works.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt you 1 second. Can you explain wearable technology for kids with autism so that you can prevent or predict anxiety?
Yeah. So the whole, the problem is that a lot of children with autism have a hard time communicating how they feel, right? And they're like a lot of times hypersensitive. So we wanted to have wearable technology where we could track indicators like temperature, heart rate, and sweat, and use those to predict anxiety so that parents could tell when those indicators were changing, then their kids weren't feeling well and that something in their surrounding was creating anxiety and they couldn't.
Triggering it.
Yeah. So that, you know, they could instead of like, if let's say there's a dog and the dog's barking and they can say, Mom, I'm scared of the dog, but they can feel, you can see their heart rate going up. Then you can be like, hey, I'm going to take you away from the dog because you're scared. Or I'm going to, make that interaction be, a little bit more.
So you could see the patterns based on the technology.
Yeah. So a couple of the engineers were like, this is amazing. We're getting like so much traction. We're having so much interest. We talked to so many parents. They're like, we're going to take it and make it a startup. And they did. And that startup is still running out of Toronto. And they're making revenue 5 years later. Yeah. I feel like I was at the very like initial parts of it, because once I graduated, I was like so it's completely their thing. But for me, it was kind of like the bite where I was like, I want to do this. This is a way where we can actually solve problems. But I need to really understand how the world works. So I joined the corporate world and I went to monitor Deloitte to management consulting, which is like completely different.
Yeah.
I joined the office in Vancouver, and then I was transferred to Toronto because, Toronto's a way bigger city. We had bigger projects, bigger clients. It was just a way more exciting place to be work-wise. And I was there to learn. So I was like, I'm here to learn. I'm going to work really, really hard so I can learn the most that I can in the least amount of time so I can go do what I really want to do.
And
so that's when I moved to Toronto.
When we met.
Yeah. So that's what I was doing in Toronto. I was working for Monitor Deloitte in consulting. I try to get as close to the innovation arm as possible. So try to work on some of the innovation projects. And that's where we met. And I love Toronto. I was there for not long enough. It was a very different city than Vancouver. And it was like the East Coast. It's a 5-hour direct flight to San Jose. With the time difference, I could be home for dinner. Going to Vancouver, it's like a day travel, right? And I was loving Toronto, but after almost 2 years, I was like, I don't, this feels right. Like I really, this is not my path. I don't want to do consulting. I don't want to do the corporate world. So I applied to this program called Singularity University. Funny story. When we were doing the project in UBC, we applied to go to Singularity because they only pick like 90 people, and some countries send people. So Canada, of course, because they're so forward, they were sending people. So we applied with the project and we won, but the candidate had to be Canadian, had to be over the age of 21, and had to have the summer free. So only one of our engineers, who's now the CEO of the project, she was the right person to go, went to the program. And I remember thinking, one day I'm going to go. But I couldn't at that time. So, fast forward 2 years later, Costa Rica opens up our own challenge because this woman called Priscilla had gone the year before, and she was like, we need to send more Costa Ricans. So she organized, she got sponsors, she got the government involved. She's like, we're going to send Costa Ricans. So I applied to that in early 2017. And I went to Singularity.
So just for context, what is Singularity University?
Yeah. So Singularity used to be, they've changed their model. They had this program called the Global Solutions Program, where they put together like 90 people from all around the world and talked about exponential technologies with the goal of how do we use them to positively impact people's lives.
Yes.
So after like everything I'd done in university, I was like, this is, where I go to learn how we actually use these tools. So I went in the summer of 2017, I came to the Bay Area. And I haven't left since. But that was kind of like my return to the West Coast as well. I was like, oh no, I was already in the East Coast and all that. But it's okay, West Coast, Best Coast for sure. And then I did Singularity, and I met there a Peruvian who's finishing his PhD out of Jennifer Doudna's lab, who's now a Nobel Prize winner on CRISPR and synthetic biology. And he had an idea about how we could engineer viruses to solve or to have a solution for antibiotic resistance. And for me, the scope of the problem was just so intriguing. And it was just like, it's such a humongous problem that if we have even the smallest impact, we could like really move the needle. So I worked on Xbiotics for 2.5 years. Right after Singularity, I went back to Deloitte. I quit my job. They were very supportive. They were like, go ahead, do things. Come back if you want to. They were great, actually.
Same with me at Scotia. When I quit the bank to do comedy, it felt like some of them were like, you save yourself. Save yourself. If we can't, you go do.
Yeah. They were actually like really incredible about it. And they were like, they actually said, why don't you try it out for a year? And if it doesn't work, we'll hold your spot.
What?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Which I realize it's a huge privilege as an entrepreneur to have that fallback, because it's like, you can take a lot of risks knowing that, they'll wait. And I think that speaks very highly of them and the team at Toronto.
And it's easier to be creative and perform when you're not stressed about the uncertainty of the future in many ways.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you still have, like, when we started Nextbiotics, it was like, we lived like we had $100,000, right? For 2 people, a lab materials, IP lawyers,
That's insane.
like
that's nothing.
It's like we were paying our food and our rent. That was the deal. And with that, just like trying to get enough to like raise more money. So we did definitely live like the scrappy entrepreneur life.
If you could describe to a 10-year-old what Nextbiotics did, how would you describe it?
So, so a 10-year-old. Okay. So there are these organisms called bacteriophages, which are actually the natural predators of bacteria, right? So bacteria has these little viruses that attach themselves and they, in many cases, kill them. These phages are normally really, benign organisms. So what we were trying to do was to modify them so that when they were killing bacteria, they would kill all of them, or that they would kill specific bacteria that were creating problems in antibiotic resistance, that were either too prominent or too resistant.
Wow, this is pretty intense. Smart people. I love it.
Very deep tech, intense biotech research work.
And how did you go from, lawyer thing didn't work out, business at UBC, management consulting, now you taste the side of the corporate, the business, show me the money, and now you're talking about bacteria and organisms, but you didn't study life sciences.
Not at all. And when I remember that the biggest thing that Singularity did for me, besides finding my co-founder and the amazing friends that I still have from it, is it absolutely changed my mind about what I was capable of. I remember having conversations being like, we could start any company, but for example, me, I'm never going to start a company in biology because I'm not a biologist. And this guy, who was like one of the facilitators, was like, you absolutely can. You're like 20. At that time, I was like 25. He was like, you're 25. If everything goes right, you could live up to 100 years. Why are you going to define what you've done for the last really less than 10 years of your life, what you're going to do in the future? What you need to do is develop the curiosity and the capacity to learn what you need to learn.
Oh,
and that completely broke what I was like, I'm not a scientist, but I've spent a lot of time trying to understand, right? Like, how do scientific developments happen? How do we apply them? Who really knows what they need to do? And it's kind of like not thinking that I have to do everything myself, but it's kind of, how do we build the puzzle? How do we bring the right pieces, the people that can go really deep, the people that can go, really wide in the different scientific topics. And it was a complete change of mind. And then I got into biotech and I'm like, what is this? Both my parents are doctors, which I feel like I could call them and be like, does this make any sense? But it was just learning. So I spent 2.5 years learning, what is synthetic biology? Who's here? Going to the conferences, having conversations, being super okay with being the less smart person in the room and being I have no idea what this is going on. Please teach me. I'm learning a lot.
That's incredible. And I feel like not putting the past in the future when it comes to life and entrepreneurship in general just opens up the floodgates to so many different things. And at the same time, I feel like knowing the technical part of it, if we were to graph out your life, maybe at the beginning, in general, on average, being really technical at the beginning is knowing the technical part of the business is really important. But as you go down the line, it's more important to be able to delegate, to be able to sell, to be able to influence. So you don't need to know everything. You just need to know enough to be able to communicate with the people that have to know everything to move the needle. So what happened after Singularity University and the what was the name? Nextbiotics.
Yeah, so I always think Nextbiotics was my MBA. I was instead of going to an MBA, I did this because I learned so much, and there were a lot of things we got right and a lot of things we didn't get right. But we ended up trying to replace the use of antibiotics in food because 80% of antibiotics go to food. So we were trying to replace how antibiotics are used in things like poultry production. I was a very strict vegetarian at the time. I hadn't had any, meat for the last 3 years. I ended up having conversations of how do we kill chickens more efficiently? And it's kind of it was such a kind of like separation between where I wanted to be personally and where I knew the business had to go, right? It was like, we've done a lot of work. That's where, our best go-to-market entry point was. But it started to become really hard for me to kind of like come home and, merge those two worlds together. And ultimately, I think the conversation around climate change has really accelerated. And actually the time at Singularity was focused on climate change. It was like, how do we use these technologies for climate change? It was the first time they'd done it with a theme. So this whole time I was having this, feeling of guilt of being like, yes, we're solving a huge problem, but we're not solving like the daunting hurricane that's coming towards us. And after a couple of years, I was like, I really want to do work that is related to climate change so that I can like look at those news and be like, okay, I might not be solving the whole thing, but like I'm contributing a little bit. So I left Nextbiotics in early 2020. My co-founder took it over to kind of like drive through to the technical milestones that we had. At that time, we had a partner that was like ready to commercialize our product. And I left, which was hard. It was really hard for me. It's important for me to say that like the big vision didn't come to life. And for me, although it sounds ugly and like in Costa Rica, people don't like talking about these things, it was a failure if you think about it for me from like what I set out to do and what I was actually able to do. But I think it's also important for me to be able to say it and say, I learned so much from it, and it was a really important part of my career. And I think it was important that it didn't work the way that I planned it out. But yeah.
I feel like it's very important that you have those moments where it doesn't work out. Because, I mean, if we just look at zeros and ones, maybe like a zero is a failure, but it's your MBA. Like I like to say that my MBA was quitting the bank because in these 4 years, I've said this in many interviews, finally, after 4 years of quitting the bank, I'm now making more money than I used to make at the bank. But I was eating shit for 4 years until I could finally make it. It's subjective at the end of the day. But you're learning all these skills that become stepping stones for the next project. And like Steve Jobs says, I know it's cheesy, but it's super important in that, I think, Stanford graduation speech where he's like, you can only connect the dots looking backwards.
Yeah.
And it's huge, because you don't really know where you're going to go. And deeply grateful to the bank as well. Similar to you and Deloitte, because had I gone straight into what I do now, into comedy, into training and development, teaching companies how to leverage humor for better business results, had I done that out of high school or out of university, I would have failed miserably. So 7 years at the bank became my big experience for me to be able to make it. And then when it comes to product market fit, a lot of people talk about product market fit, but there's also product market founder fit. Yeah. So luckily, I found a business partner in Juan. As you know, we both quit the bank together to pursue our professional careers in comedy. And then we founded Malpensando and Rethink. He did marketing and graphic design and branding. And I did finance. So I do finances and the operations in the company. And he does all the marketing and branding. So it was really good because we've kind of complemented each other. Where did the... do you want to say something? Because I was going to go into...
No, I'm just laughing at thinking about you at the bank. And I feel like I saw a video of like when you came home and like changed your clothes from like the suit to like your actual what you wear. And I was just thinking about that because I thought about it the other day when I was like dressing up to go to a meeting. And like, I just feel like I can now dress however the hell I want. And like, it's even more of a self-expression. And even at Nextbiotics, I would be like, I have to wear a blazer and like, I have to wear makeup and I'm going to wear my glasses so that I look older and all these things that were like still like playing a role. And I feel like all the time that I was at Deloitte as well, like I would dress up, like in the corporate world, with like a blazer and a skirt and like, and then I'm thinking about it and I was like, that was so not me. Right. And like, even things of like being able to wear whatever you want and like work however you want. It's an absolute privilege that also allows you to do your best work. And like, now that I see you like wearing a turtle, like you would never wear that to the bank, but it's also a great expression of, I don't know, feeling aligned with where you want to go.
Yeah. There's a big investor that you probably aren't know because he's in San Francisco. He's the CEO or the founder of AngelList. His name is Naval.
Yeah.
And I fucking love his podcast. Or there's like a big episode called how to get rich or something, but it's really how to build wealth everywhere in your life. It's 3 hours. It's a compilation of all the episodes about becoming rich or becoming wealthy in all the areas of your life. And he just like breaks it down what it takes to make it anywhere, to become wealthy, to become successful. And one of my favorite quotes, which has become like a centerpiece for my life, is escape competition through authenticity. And now we can be authentic and just be 100% ourselves. And nobody can be Maricel Saenz because you can only be the best Maricel Saenz that you can be because you're the best person at being you. It sounds cheesy and weird, but it takes time to develop that authentic self and to discover what you actually want to do. So those failures, on quotations here, are just part of you peeling the layers of the onion to become whoever you want to become, and go in pajamas if you want to just like solve the problem of coffee, and climate change.
And the other day, someone in my team told me that they'd seen a video of me talking about Nexbiotics, and they said, "You look like a different person." And that was 2 years, like not that long ago. And I was like, I was a different person. You know what I mean? Like the way that I came across was very different. But it was so powerful that they'd seen it, like it didn't come from me. They're like, I saw this video and I see you every day and you just seem so different. I hope in a good way. I don't know. He didn't say. I'm hoping.
Compound foods grew out of your deep concern as a Costa Rican about the future of coffee. I read your articles. Can you tell us a bit more about that? It seems like coffee is one of the biggest polluting crops in the value chain. I read it was 5th on the totem pole of polluting crops. Yeah. So where did compound foods come from and how has it evolved in these past 2 years?
Yeah, it's evolved a ton actually. So after Nexbiotics, I was like, I want to do climate change and I wanted to do food. I think a lot of the reason I wanted to do food is because I was surrounded by a lot of food entrepreneurs. So my roommate, when I was at Nexbiotics, is the co-founder and CEO of Beanless Foods, which means like our Halloween party was packed with like food tech founders. I could see all these people like reinventing milk, reinventing fish, reinventing meat. And I was like, this has so much potential because, I definitely drank the Kool-Aid when you hear people pitch it in so many different ways. And I'd been actually, even before leaving Nexbiotics, I'd been worried about coffee because coffee is in a complicated spot where it's kind of like a double-edged problem where, yes, it's really polluting. It's like 5th when you look at carbon emissions, but it's also at risk, right? So it only grows in certain region of the world where Costa Rica, we're lucky to sit in. And it does because Costa Rica, like we're close to the equator, we don't have winters, we don't have intense summers. And like, if you think about where it's grown in Costa Rica, it's like very temperate, like nice, like mountain weather, but that's changing, right? It's getting warmer and warmer. We're having floods in some places, droughts in other, frosts in other. And what's happening is coffee is a very sensible crop and it's not being able to grow in those environments anymore. And we're already seeing the effects. Like this year alone, there was a frost in Brazil. The price of coffee is the highest it's been in almost 7 years because they're predicting that not only was the 2021 crop affected by the 2022. So I initially thought, why don't we grab a coffee plant and we modify it so it can resist higher temperatures and need less water. And that way we can grow it and it's going to be more resistant. And then...
So just to stop you there to understand.
Yeah.
So you're going to modify the crop. So the coffee is not going to grow in the lab. It's going to be modified in the mountains and... So that
was my first idea, but that ain't gonna work. So that was my first plan. And then this guy wasn't a mentor at the time and became my first investor was like, if you want to try it, I'll help you out, but it's gonna take you like 7 to 10 years. There's this really, really cool project called Modified, that it's a partnership between farmers in Hawaii and Cornell University, where they modified a papaya to make it resistant to a virus that was like decimating the crop. And they modified the papaya and now the virus can't kill the papaya and it's delicious. But it took them, I think, between 7 and 8 years.
So not in the lab.
Yeah, they modified, like they did the modification in the lab and then they planted it in the soil.
Oh, okay. And
and the papaya looks the same.
So that was the original plan. The first idea was to modify the coffee plant, the seed, and then go plant it that would take 7 to 10 years. So that didn't happen.
7 to 10 years to do the research, plus 5 years for the coffee plant to grow.
Wow.
So like we just don't have that. I don't have that much patience, and we don't have that much time. So that idea didn't work. And then we kind of like reassessed what coffee was from like a first principles perspective. And really coffee is an extraction of chemical compounds, right? And what we're drinking, like what I'm drinking here, it's like what we extract from the coffee bean, that it's chemical compounds that smell and taste and have caffeine and make us feel in a certain way. So we were like, why do we need to, modify the plant, to grow it, to pick it, to process it, to roast it, to brew it? Or can't we just recreate what the liquid is in a more efficient way? And that's what we set out to do, to be like, can we understand what makes coffee, and then recreate it with biology, trying to engineer yeast strains so that they can produce those compounds, use different agricultural substrates that can help us with the mass, and look at fermentation. So fermentation is this amazing ancient technology in which we can have cultures that transform foods, that can transform milk into cheese, and that it can transform milk into like mozzarella cheese, which is very simple, or it can transform milk into like gorgonzola or like, like really complex cheeses through changing the process. So what compound foods looks like today is we are recreating coffee without the coffee beans. We use agricultural substrates, and that means other seeds, grains, cereals. As much as we can, we try to use byproducts of other processes. So think about a process that, has waste, like the seeds, and we can grab those. And we have developed fermentation processes and technologies where we can have the cultures help us make it taste and smell like coffee. And we brew it. And today our first product is a cold brew, and our cold brew doesn't have any like genetically engineered components now, but we're also doing research in the long term because we think that's going to help us improve the quality of our product. So we're kind of thinking short term and long term. And in the first product, it's not genetically modified yet, but it tastes great.
I read in the article that which really excited me is that you can tone up or tone down the level of caffeine or something like that.
Yeah. So you're the second person today to bring this up, which means we should definitely do it. We've like tested it and everyone is super excited about it. But one of the really cool things about compound is that coffee is very diverse. And we know this, right? Like, honestly, I drink better coffee here than we do in Costa Rica because as an exporting country, we export our best. Luckily, there's like this movement around like specialty coffee in Costa Rica now, and a couple of coffee shops that are doing a great job. But you can have like 1820 or Bolio or Brit, and they all can taste very different, right? If you want to change that flavor profile as a roaster, you can kind of try to change some of your processes. If you're a farmer, you're kind of at the mercy of sun and rain. Well, in our case, we're really trying to understand what each of our components does to our flavor profile. And our goal is that that's going to help us create different flavor profiles quicker, because we can be like, you don't like it that bitter? We can change that. You don't like it that acidic? We can change that. And in the same component, we can change the functionality. So I want to drink coffee all day. I'm drinking cold brew right now. I want to have a hot coffee in the afternoon. Like, I just want to drink coffee all day. And I have to stop at 3 p.m. because then I can't sleep. So that was the idea of like, what if we could have like a dose that like something that tastes equally good, but has less caffeine for the afternoon, and something that has a lot more caffeine or just the same in the morning. And we found people are really excited about that capacity to like tune things, which I think it's key to
super excited. Because for example, I realized that I used to drink a lot of coffee at the bank because I thought that I liked coffee. And I like it. But then I quit the bank. And then I was at my house the next morning, first day after quitting the bank, I was drinking coffee. And I'm like, I feel like an idiot just drinking coffee by myself. And then I realized it was like a social thing for me.
Yeah.
I love having something to sip on when I'm talking to people. And then 3 years ago, I started to realize that coffee actually gave the caffeined coffee gave me like, I got like taquicardia, like I was feeling nervous. I was just like the jitters. And then I stopped drinking coffee like in 2017 or 18. Now I just drink decaf, like maybe once a month. But I'm really curious. What I love the most about coffee, apart from the social side of it, is the ritual, like putting it in the French press, waiting for it, pouring it, a little bit of milk, a little bit of sugar. And how would that experience change? I would for sure buy compound coffee because I love the idea that it doesn't have like a negative footprint on Earth. Mm-hmm. And to me, it's like 90% the social aspect and 10% the ritual. I could care less if it comes from the mountains of Colombia or El Salvador or Costa Rica. I mean, obviously there's like an emotional side of it where I'm like, oh, this is Costa Rican coffee, but it could be from like Egypt and I would still believe people. I can't tell where the coffee's from.
Yeah.
How would the experience change?
Yep. So that is really important to me because coffee for me means a lot. Like I drink a lot of it, but I actually learned to drink. Like I started drinking coffee seriously in school in Canada. And I was like drinking it. And then I got to Costa Rica and I was like, what the hell have I been drinking? It was like Canadian, like gross university coffee shop coffee. But it became like an absolute tool for me to study. And it's just like, I just love the way that it made me feel. And my family gets together like every Friday to have coffee. It's just like el café. And it's like, that's where my family gets together. It's like very central to me. And I also think it's like this amazing thing where it's like, you can like the most, like the person you admire the most. And at Deloitte, it was a huge tool for me to be like, do you want to grab a coffee? And nobody will say no, because it's like, they'll sit down and they'll have a coffee and it's not a full meal and they can do it in 15 or 20 minutes and you can talk to people. So
it's such not messy.
For
it's
connection.
Not like,
it's like you can go for a walk.
Yeah.
You can sit down. You can sit in like a corner. And it was like such a tool during my time at Deloitte to meet people that I like admire that were like way more senior to be like, would you like to grab a coffee and tell me about your career? And I still do it, right? I'm like, do you want to grab a coffee? So I think it's like a huge connection tool. And I definitely want us to keep that. So in our roadmap, our first product is a cold brew, but our second product is we want to do ground coffee because we want people to keep that ritual. We want people to be able to do it however you like it. If you want it in a French press, in a pour over, however you like it. But that is kind of like in our second product in our roadmap. Yeah, in our rollout. The first one will be a cold brew, which is a little bit different. It's a lot more like American, I would say. In Costa Rica, we don't drink a lot of cold brew. But the goal is that you'll buy it at coffee shops and it'll be kind of like the first interaction that people have with coffee. But we really want to lean on to that moment of like connection. Also in our interviews, we've learned it's like even more important for some people. For moms, some of them are like, this is like the 5 minutes I get for myself, before like chaos starts. It's like, I can have a cup of coffee and it's like, for me, or for some people, it's like, that's all I want to do on a Saturday afternoon, drink a coffee and read a book. It can become really important for people. And we definitely want to keep that. And just to like wrap up that thought, it's also why I want our messaging to be positive and empowering. Like, I don't want it to be a guilt trip climate change purchase.
Yeah. Oh, that's huge. To me, actually, I was just thinking my brother Kurt's girlfriend.
Who is hilarious, by the way.
Pao is hilarious too. Pao, I don't know if you know, but she's going to love this episode because she's the owner of Cabra Negra.
I've been there. It's amazing.
Which is a coffee shop, and they went to San Francisco. They went to it might have been nice to go see you when they went to San Francisco because she loves, like when they go to New York or Los Angeles or San Francisco or Peru, they like it's coffee tourism for Pao, and she's gonna love this. But not just because of Pao and my brother, and my mom, but coffee has been like in my childhood big time because my stepmom used to own a coffee company, like exporting big amounts of coffee from El Salvador. My stepmom's from El Salvador and I lived in El Salvador. And I remember it was like, it was a big thing for her. It was a big company and she made like a lot of money in 96 or 95 or something, to the point that she took the entire family, like 19 of us, all paid for it to Disney World, everything, all the brothers and cousins and everybody went. It was insane. And then in 1999 or 2000 or 98, the market collapsed I don't remember what happened exactly. You probably know more about it, but the price of coffee went down everybody in El Salvador, except maybe like 1 or 2 companies went broke. And then the bank started to
knock on the door.
Yeah, knock on the door. It was horrendous for everybody. And then on that topic, because my childhood, I lived in Costa Rica till I was 10. Then I moved to El Salvador for 4 years, then Mexico. But those 4 years, and even before I lived there, because I used to visit El Salvador a lot, all I did with my dad and my stepmom, often, like on a weekly, I used to go to El Beneficio, which is the coffee plantation, and where they used to, I don't know what the word is, like roast or whatever, but it was like in Aguachapán, in El Salvador by the border with Guatemala. And I noticed in one of the articles, you said, how do you simultaneously try to help the planet and the livelihoods of so many people, in many cases, Costa Rican people or Salvadorian people or Colombian people?
Yeah.
And you said, we're partnering up with NGOs. We're making sure that these people don't get just neglected or out of business. What do you have in place, and how are you going to assist these people? Because some people may be like, well, you're taking our jobs or whatever. Yeah. But at the same time, right now, you're not going to, I mean, it's small, but the potential is huge.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think about it a lot. And I think it's also like when we were talking about like earlier, like founder market fit, like it makes a difference that I'm leading this company coming from Costa Rica and having visited coffee farms and having people like you who are like, you know, my sister-in-law has a coffee shop and my stepmom used to have a coffee. Like it's so part of our business, of our lives, right? It's like my friends' family have a coffee. Like it's just very ingrained in who we are, which means those faces have names and have families 100%. And we like understand who they are. And I actually think it makes a big difference versus some of my competitors who are like no idea. They have like never been on a coffee farm. They don't really understand. So this is very tricky for us. And I think about it a lot in terms of like, what do we do? And we are fleshing out a bunch of different projects. We'll announce them hopefully early next year around what we're doing. But we've done a really in-depth study of understanding what are the problems that people have. And the reality is the number one challenge coffee farmers are facing today, it's not compound foods, it's climate change. It's the fact that they're not getting enough rain, or they're getting too much rain, or now that the temperature is changing, you know how they have to bring pickers at certain time to like pick the coffee, but they don't have it all the time. So sometimes they bring the pickers and the coffee's not ready, and they're paying for people to just be there, and then they leave, and then the coffee's ready and it gets wasted, right? Like those are the kind of problems that they're having today. And that's the reason that many coffee farms in Costa Rica are selling out. They're selling out for commercial real estate development. You know, coffee used to be like 80% of our GDP. And I think it's less than 3 now, because it's just like less of a profitable business than it used to be. So we're thinking about what is our role here. And we've had conversations with anyone and everyone who's trying to help coffee farmers. And our thinking process is like, what is the role of compound in helping these people transition into a climate resilient future? It is not like, how do we help them keep going with coffee production? Because if we believe the science to be true, which we do, it's not going to get better. You know, it's not like coffee is going to get better in quality. It's not like yields are going to get better. It's actually going to get more and more complicated. So what are the conversations that we need to have with these people around what are other opportunities that they can do with their land, that they can ensure that what they have now is something that they can transition into the future? And how do we train them with the skill sets to do that? So it's kind of not thinking like coming back kind of like full circle to like when I was in university and saying like, giving people money doesn't help, right? Like charity doesn't help. What helps is actually like giving them the tools to, you know, solve the problems in a sustainable way. We're kind of bringing all that together in our partnerships, but we're currently still fleshing them out and still having those conversations.
I love that. Going back to how the yields have been affected. If yields are affected because you can't predict rain and you can't predict climate change and everything's being less successful in terms of the crops, that means that the price is going up. And that means that a lot of these people, even if they want to continue, they're going to go out of business. And only the biggest of companies are going to be able to weather the storm. And they're going to, a lot of these small farmers, coffee farmers, are going to be pushed out of business anyways. So I love that you're saying that. I always feel when I go into Starbucks or whatever, or like Second Cup here in Canada, you know how you go into a coffee shop and they have like pictures of the coffee picker, and the guy's like all dusty, and I feel like sometimes I'm gonna like walk in, I'm gonna be like, Don Jorge, like I'm gonna recognize one of these people because I've like grew up in El Salvador, going to the coffee plantations, and El Salvador has a big export of coffee still now. But I like that you're basically saying we're not going to give the fishermen money, or not the fishermen. We're not going to give them money. We're going to teach them how to fish so that they can do it themselves and adjust to the climate resilient future. I don't know if those are the right words, but it sounds sounds
so that's where we're working on, and we definitely don't want to come in there and be like, we know all the answers, because we don't, because we are trying to find answers for a different problem. And that is why we're trying to partner with people that do have the answers, and we're like, okay, how do we marry these two things together to help you propel, versus coming, stumping in and be like, I know what to do.
Yeah, exactly. Now, well, for sure, I would buy it 100%. Probably, if I were to find Compound Coffee, or whatever the new name of, because Compound is the name of your company, but what would we call the coffee that doesn't come from coffee beans?
We call it Beanless coffee.
Is that a term that you coined, or it's in the industry?
We're gonna make it an industry term.
I love that. Well, if I were to find beanless coffee at Starbucks, I would for sure buy it 100%. I'm even starting to buy like a lot of people would say 15 years ago, I will never buy a burger that's not real meat. And everybody's buying them now. I'm buying meatless burgers. Everybody's buying them. So yeah.
And I think it's because we're also understanding a lot more about the implications of it and how things are made. And, a big thing for me as well, which we kind of started talking about food, is there's so many different foods that we're making. And the reality of it is, if we want to feed an extra billion people, we need to produce food more efficiently, right? Like, you look at the 100%. Earth and like, we're eating it already, right? And like, we want to feed more people. We need to do it more efficiently. And coffee is amazing because of connection and delicious, etc. But also, people try funky coffee. People try coffee that was pooped by a cat. People drink coffee that was pooped by an elephant. They will try different coffee. And my hope is that it will also serve as a wedge for it to be like a friendly product that you can try and open your mind to then try, things like chicken and beef that have also been made in alternative ways, because it's not about changing what we're making, it's how we're making it. And we're just trying to make it more efficient. So that hopefully it will be part of our role in the ecosystem.
Love it. Now I want to talk about Maricel as a founder. And this is like this is one of my favorite topics. And it's basically like achievement versus fulfillment. And part of when you're an entrepreneur is every second that you're having fun or not working, every second that you're having fun is the second that you're not working. And it's very hard sometimes, especially if your paycheck depends on the success of the company, to disconnect and not be Maricel, the founder, Compound Foods all day. And it takes a toll. I mean, I'm happy that I've become a dad in many ways, because otherwise I would just try to like perform all day and write all day and do comedy all day and sell all day, because to me, this is like a chip on my shoulder. I need to prove myself that I can be successful. I mean, I already did, but it was a big thing that I can be successful, and not just like successful, but also in like financial terms, not at the bank. And it's necessary to disconnect in many ways, to give your mind a rest, because it's not efficient or effective to be thinking about work all day. So what does Maricel do as the founder, as an entrepreneur, to disconnect and be more present? Because right now you're thinking, oh, the second round of investing, or this, or where you already did cold brew, now we got to do this, blah blah blah. So like, how do you prevent to not be in the future all day, to enjoy the present and be Maricel, the friend, the daughter, the runner, the partier? How do you disconnect?
Yeah, I definitely have not figured this out. I don't want to be, preaching what I don't practice. So I will say that this one is very, very hard for me. For a couple of reasons. One, it's just very intense. And it's also it's hard to stop thinking about it. Also, the thing I used to do for myself was to get a cup of coffee. So now it's great, before I was oh, I need a break. I'm going to go get a coffee. Now it's where was it made? How does it taste? It's just it was my thing. So I've enjoyed it. I've actually taken with this project a little bit of a different approach where it's the less I separate the two Maricels, the easier it is for me to just be myself. So instead of feeling like I have to put a front when I go to the office and then go home and hang up the coat, and think, be able to finally be myself. I kind of let be myself in the office too. And that means that I'm clumsy and quirky. And my team knows that I don't know everything. And sometimes I'm really tired. I'm I just need to go home. And that honesty and authenticity of also being myself at work allows me to not feel like I have to fully unplug when I get home. Right. And that brings sometimes, having conversations with my team about what's going on with my family and how that's affecting why, I'm going to have to, this week I'm not fully there. So for me, kind of started treating them as one person also allows me to nurture one person. Right. And be Maricel, the founder, also needs to disconnect. She also needs to invest in herself, right? She also needs to exercise. It's not the one that has fun. So I feel trying to just be one person has made it a little bit easier for me because it feels less than putting up a show. And it also feels like it is all connected, right? And I have understood that investing in my self-care and my mental health, and it is actually investing in the company as well. I remember one time I had a conversation with this woman and I was telling her all the things that were going wrong. And she was this all sounds fine. What's going on with you? And I'm what do you mean? She was you sound like you're not okay. This was in the, when I was still at Nexbiotics. And she told me, if you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of your team and you can't help the world. It's if you can't help yourself, you can't help your team, you can't help the world, right? And it's if your goal is to help the world, start by helping yourself. And I think about that all the time where it's if I'm feeling really burnt out, to keep going, it's going to be detrimental to everyone. I don't have a good routine, I would say, of the things that I do, but I am getting better at saying I need a break and doing things getting out of the city. And I try to do things that don't let me think. So that's why I like things like skiing, which is a very northern thing to do. We don't do a lot of that in Costa Rica, but you have to if you live in Canada and want to be okay with the winter. Be yeah, great. At least there's snow. With something that is so manual that if I'm not paying attention, I'll fall to disconnect.
Yes.
And then I try to, I also lowered my expectations a little bit. I think it's really hard to be the best CEO, the best friend, the best girlfriend, the best daughter, the best aunt, the best all of this. And it's just I communicate with everybody. I'm trying to do the best that I can, and I will nurture my relationships and I take time for them. But I'm less hard on myself because otherwise you feel you just can't do everything. And I try to do things like writing. It really helps me, journaling and, reading. I'm so boring. I've actually really put to bed Maricel the partier. Definitely. That's why I was the days that used to be fun. I would go to a comedy show by myself. I miss that. But I've also learned that I recharge in different ways. It's taken a lot of kind of meditation and understanding myself to be how do I feel recharged? And if you meet me, you say she's an extrovert. And I am in many cases. I love being around people. If there's interesting conversations and people that I love, they leave my house and I'm oh, that was amazing. Yeah. But sometimes they're also because that kind of goes on the flip side. If it's an environment that I don't like, it can be very draining for me to be around people, that are taking a lot. So I kind of combine it. Sometimes I want to be around friends. And then sometimes I'm I want to be at home, sit on my floor and paint. I have a book where I just color in, and kind of mix those two together and being okay with not being fully one or the other.
Oh my God, that was such a brilliant answer. I have so many comments because this is right up my alley. First of all, 100%, being unhappy is inefficient. It's unproductive. So like you said, you have to pay yourself first to be able to pay the company. If you're good, the company wins. And then the other thing is, I like when you said that you do stuff like skiing that takes your mind off of the work or whatever. And Naval, actually, I say this a lot, but he says people think that they want peace of mind, but what they really want is peace from mind. So you don't want your mind to be peaceful. You want to be not in the mind. You want to have peace from the mind. That's why a lot of people resort to surfing, because you can't be like, oh, you know what? In the middle, on top of the wave, you can be like, oh, you know what? I forgot to send that email. I should have. You can't. You're climbing. In the middle. Yeah, climbing, skiing, surfing.
My favorite is scuba diving, but the water here is so cold.
Yeah, I mean, I've never done it, but it sounds like a lot of people say it's amazing. And to your point, I love it when you said like you're just nurturing the one version, and I feel like lowering the expectations, being your authentic self. First of all, I haven't put on a suit and tie maybe like once for a wedding in like 4 years or whatever. But I felt like my identity, I had different identities at the bank. I was the banker. Then outside of it, I was like the partier when I was partying. Then I was the comedian on stage. And it's hard to kind of maneuver through all of these. Now I'm just me, everywhere. And it's really good. I heard this in a podcast once, and the question was, do you think there's like, how do you achieve work-life balance? And she said, a CEO from San Francisco, I think, she said, I don't believe in work-life balance. I believe in work-life integration. Like, it's like integrated. It's sometimes you just need to be 90% work. Sometimes you'll be 90% mom, but it's like integrated, and it's like moving pieces. And also, to your point, you can't, like, trying to be someone else, it's draining. And that self-awareness as to what drains you is key, because as someone who studies high performance a lot, and you are 100% a high performer, what makes people, so the people who have accomplished extraordinary things do them by not mitigating their weaknesses. Obviously, you have to be at a certain level to perform well, but not by mitigating their weaknesses, but really by doubling down on their strengths and having the self-awareness of knowing you can't double down on your strengths if you don't know your strengths.
Yeah.
So this is fascinating. I'm really curious because I have my own hypothesis. Do you know what your top strengths are? Like, have you done some of these tests, or have people told you? Because I have my hypothesis as to what your key strengths are.
I want to hear it. I feel like I've done this test. I don't remember. I always say that one of my superpowers is convincing people. And like, I think we convince people to like give us money, and then I convince people to like join the team. And it's like, just like convincing people to do things. I would say one of my strengths, let's see if it's true, is I have a lot of energy, and then I drink coffee. People are like, why do you drink coffee? But I have a lot of energy, which is, it can be good and it can be bad, because I think if I have positive energy, it can be very like contagious, but if I have negative energy as well. So like learning to mitigate that has like, I can use it as a strength. And it's like, if I'm like I can be super inspiring, but I can also be like, so when I'm having a bad day, I just work from home, because I don't need to bring that energy to work. I want to bring that energy when I'm like, like I'm like, my team's coming for like a Thanksgiving potluck for lunch today. Right. And it's like that, those are the things that are like, I'm excited. You guys can come. If that wasn't the case, I'll be like, let's go to a restaurant. So like kind of trying to like learn how my energy can be positive and negative, and then like mitigate that. Yeah. I think it's one of my strengths. And then I talk a lot.
Well, I think so. These are my 5 key strengths for you.
Okay, nice. I'm going to write them down.
And if you do the Myers, like the 16 personalities test, or
I should do it again, because I did it 4 years ago. I feel like I'm probably different. And
then there's another one called oh my God, I recommend it all the time, but it's like the Gruber report. I don't know. Anyways, so
you can send it to me after.
Yeah. So it gives you, like, everybody has approximately, under this test that I forgot the name, 34 strengths, but the $20 gets you your top 5 strengths, and it explains specifically why they are your top 5 strengths and how you should double down on these. So it's really crazy, because you feel like they've been spying. We think that we're unique, and we are, but we're very predictable as humans. So these are your top 5 strengths, and I would be willing to put some money on this. So
okay, I'm gonna do the test and then let you know.
The strengths are in 4 quadrants, and I'm actually going to pull them up because this is really interesting. So these are your top 5 strengths: communication, execution. You make shit happen. You need somebody like Maricel on your team. 100% learner. Mm-hmm. You are curious and you learn a lot. And so those are 3. And energetic. So there's one called like woo or like high energy. So you get people to do stuff based on your energy. And your 5th, I would say, is authenticity. I don't even know if / influencing, I would say. So here it is. I found it now. So the 4 quadrants are executing, influencing, relationship building, and strategic thinking. So you'll get your top 5 strengths, and these 5 strengths will fall under these 4 quadrants. Mm-hmm. And I think you will have a lot more in executing. Maybe 2 or 3 of your top 5 will be in executing and influencing. But also, you're pretty strategic thinking. So I don't know. I would just say, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. I think strategic thinking has been an interesting one for me because I find that it's like exactly what we were talking right before the podcast, where it's like, all of a sudden we're like, Series A, and then like the plumber calls because the dishwasher doesn't work. And it's like that context switching, which is like that, you know, like the dishwasher needs to run so we can clean things, so we can execute another experiment. But like, I also need to, so like those things are hard for context switching. So I've done things which are really key around creating the environment for it. So I, for example, went for 3 days to an Airbnb in the mountains. It helps that my boyfriend's also a founder, which also we obviously bring work home. And then we went and it's like, all this weekend we're going to do is think. And before I went to that weekend, I wrote down like the 5 questions that I wanted to think about, and just like no emails, no laptop, and just like think. And that, I feel like comprising that like strategic thinking into pieces was like, oh, nice. I don't have to do it for a bit because I like solved those problems. I can go back to executing. So building that environment where it's like, now I'm in execution mode, now I'm in strategic thinking mode, allows you to do like a little bit of both. But I'm definitely more in like the day-to-day, you know. Yeah,
you look and you sound like and you act like an executor. You make shit happen, and that's why you're the founder. You get stuff, and you also have really good at influencing, so you get people that get shit to happen. Like you may not make it happen, but I think that's what a founder does. You need to be able to influence and execute so that things happen, because you may not be the one who knows every single technical thing, but you are the one that can make things happen. And then Gallup report. It's called the Gallup report. Double L.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. They have a book.
The Gallup report. And then based on what you just said about the Airbnb, inspiration is perishable and you don't get it all the time. So as soon as you get it, you need to write it down because it may not come back, or which not a lot of people can't do. You go to an Airbnb for 3 days and you do what needs to be done. In my case, I write the comedy special, or I do what I need to do, write down. Sometimes I get up at 5 in the morning and I write like comedy skits that I need to do for like agencies that I'm doing like videos for or copyright for. So really good. Okay. So we're coming towards the end, but I have, before the rapid fire, I noticed in the photo of one of these articles that women are the majority of your team. I saw one guy. I was just going to say,
I've been thinking about
that's amazing.
Yeah. Well, we have another guy now. I was just going to say, when we were talking about all this, that like one of the key things for me has been team building. When we're thinking about like executing, and like the number one thing that I've been focused on the last quarter has been on hiring and building the team. And it's also the thing that I am the most proud of. Like, it's something that I love going to work. I like open the door and I see that and I'm like, I love being here and I love that people are here. And something that I told my team that exact day that they told me that I looked like a different person, I said, Compound is an expression of me, but part of my job is to make sure that it's also an expression of each of you, that you can find out what you want to do. And the amazing thing about joining an early stage startup is like, I have a food scientist who helps me with my Instagram because she's awesome and also helps me like plan my retreat. Right. And then like, I have like my fermentation director who like loves to cook. So she's like, I'll take point on like the team dinner. And it's like, go ahead, do your thing. It doesn't have to be all an expression of me. And yeah, we are a lot of women. Initially it was like, we were just hiring the best candidates. And now I think it's also like cycling, because then you have all these powerful women who've been in environments where they're like not appreciated or they have to deal with bullshit. They're like, this sounds so refreshing, right? Like I want to join. So it's actually helped us get amazing talent as well. So it's like this kind of like really fun cycle. But it creates a different culture as well. And it allows us for also to be more authentic. And that thing when I was talking about of like Maricel, the founder, Maricel, the person, it's the same for my team. And I know if like someone's sister is visiting, if someone's going through a hard time at work, and we were just talking about someone in my team's like her daycare situation, you know, like we open the door for those conversations because you are one human, right? And we support you. It's like, hey, your kid is changing daycare. It's fine. You know, this week, you don't have to be on top of everything because we know you'll pick it up next week. But if we don't know, right, then it's hard to be supportive of people if you don't know. So around team building, my whole kind of philosophy is we hire the best talent that we can. We hire for cultural fit, people that want to grow, that want to learn, that are not going to be assholes. And when they show up, we treat them as people, whole human, and try to take out, like, to allow them to express the best of themselves.
Yeah, and the company is just a reflection of the founder. Like if you're uptight, they're going to be uptight. But if you're relaxed and you're yourself, they can be themselves. So that's really good. And to echo what you just said, there's this book that I always mention on the podcast really quickly. It's called The E-Myth. I think you would love it, by the way. Have you read The E-Myth?
No. The E-Myth?
No, E-Myth.
The E-Myth. No, but I've seen it.
Okay, so Michael E. Gerber. Incredible. So the main premise is E-Myth means the entrepreneurial myth. And the entrepreneurial myth says that people who are good at the technical job think that because they're good at the technical job, they should start a company that does the technical job. But it's false. Because if you're really good, so if somebody's really good at baking pies, a lot of people say, oh, then I should start a bakery. But no, because the skill set of baking pies is very different than the skill set required to run a business that bakes pies. Yeah. So it says that there's 3 different skill sets in a business. There's the technical person who does the pies, who bakes the pies, the manager who does the day-to-day, the present, who runs the company, and then the entrepreneurial skill set required to think towards the future. And it is very rare, like all of us have the 3 skills, but it is very rare that one person will have a strong skill set of the 3. So our job is to find out, where do we fit? Are we the technical guy? Are we the managerial person? Or are we the entrepreneurial person? Because a lot of people, especially at banks or whatever, they're like, oh, you're really good at Excel. You should become a manager. But the manager deals with people. Maybe that's not your skill set. And that's a whole nother animal. So I think that you've been able to really identify and have that self-awareness as to what you do best, and learn from previous stints in other ventures to be able to be the best that you can be at Compound Foods.
Yeah, and also leaning into that side takes some investment, right? It's kind of like, then you read books around like, how are you the best at X? One example, really quick, is my boyfriend is a AI engineer, and he was the CTO of his company for a long time. A couple of years ago, they switched and he became CEO. And for me, it was weird because all of a sudden he wasn't coding all night, but he was on calls all day, and his job like fundamentally changed. And he changed the way that he thought about the business, the way that he laid out the strategy, the books that he was reading, the conversations that we were having. He was leaning more right onto like the entrepreneur manager side versus the technical side. And I really think he's thriving, but it took a lot from him to make that change. And also then now learn this whole thing, right? It's like before you just had to like sit down and code and tell people what to code, but now it's like people problem, right?
Yeah.
So it's important to know that you also have to invest in it and like want to be good at it and takes time.
So you're not in the same company. He has a different company.
No, he has his own company. Yeah.
And what's the name?
It's called MindsDB. And they do, I'm going to screw it up, but they do AI as a product to sit on databases so that people that have really large databases and want to do predictive models don't have to hire data scientists, but kind of amplify their data by using their product.
Wow, that's pretty good. A pretty good explanation.
Very different, which is great too.
Amazing. Okay, so rapid fire here.
Okay.
You don't have to answer rapidly, but if you can, it'll make it more exciting for our listeners.
Okay.
Complete this statement. I lose track of time when
I'm reading.
What has been one of your happiest moments?
When my nephew was born.
What are 3 things you would like to be doing in 3 years?
In 3 years that I would like to be doing? I would like to be selling product. I would like to be running more. And I would like to be, what else? Well, I would like the company to be bigger.
Scaling.
So I would like to be leading a larger team.
Beautiful. If you could invite 3 people to your home for dinner, dead or alive, who would they be?
Jacqueline Novogratz. She's the founder of Acumen Fund that does a lot of social impact investment.
I listened to Jacqueline Novogratz's episode on the Tim Ferriss podcast. Did you listen to it?
No.
Oh my God, you're going to lose your shit.
Her book, The Blue Sweater, was my favorite book for years. And she was, remember how I told you that I like changed his perspective around how it was all about her. And I went one time to see her speak at SFU in Vancouver. And she's just an amazing woman. I would love to have dinner with her anytime.
Listen to her episode on the Tim Ferriss podcast. You're going to lose it. I didn't even know who she was. And I fell in love with her immediately. Cool. Incredible episode. Okay. That's one.
That's one. Another one, which you probably don't know, but it's this woman called Helena, and she has like a low alcohol aperitif brand. Actually not that far here in Northern California, but I just love her approach and her product, and I would love to have dinner with her. And then the third one, which is very different. I think Angela Merkel. I think I would love to talk to her because she's just like such a badass woman. Yeah.
Boss women. I love it.
No, actually, I mean, some guys can come to dinner too. They're partners.
Share an interesting thing about yourself that not many people would know.
An interesting thing about myself that not a lot of people would know. So I think I'm really funny. You can gauge that probably in another conversation. And a couple of people have told me that I should do stand-up comedy. And like, sometimes I go on a roll and it's really funny.
Yeah, you had a lot of good bits today. Like the delivery is spot on, especially you had like solid punches. And I was like, that could be a bit. That could be a bit, but I didn't want to interrupt you.
I had a friend who does stand-up comedy, and one time I was like at a beach telling a story, and then he goes on and he's like, you should think about it. But I don't know. I would be embarrassed.
You know what? I'll tell you like in 5 seconds what you do really well. You know what you could do to get laughs? So part of the thing that makes people laugh, obviously, comedy is truth and pain or tragedy plus time. So beautiful things are not funny. Truth, like real stuff, true stuff, or relatable stuff, like, oh yeah, that happened to me. That's true. It's funny because it's true. That's the truth part. And the pain part is when you share like shitty things that happen to you and you connect with people through vulnerability and authenticity. But the other thing that makes people laugh, the definition of a punch, is surprise, the element of surprise. So not just a surprise bit, because you've said stuff that is unexpected and that's why you get the laugh. But the other thing you do really well and how people get laughs is you simply change the rhythm of whatever you're saying. So you speak really fast, you're high energy. So just by deaccelerating and saying something slower, you're going to get a laugh, which you have today. So you could go like, boing, and that gets a laugh. Obviously, you don't.
I laughed.
Yeah, you don't have to do the sounds, but in your narrative, you go, and I don't know. So
okay, I'll practice.
Just by doing,
I would do this. I feel like it would be fun.
Yeah, I think you would be amazing because, again, people are just a reflection of the speaker and the audience. And you're very high energy. You're very authentic. So on to the next one. What is one thing?
The what?
One thing you can't live without.
Unfortunately, my phone. Yeah, very unfortunate. But I mean, when I don't I actually find a good reflection of myself is like if I don't know where my phone is. If I'm like, where's my phone? And like I left it in the bathroom for an hour. I'm like, oh, great.
I love it. Being present. Who is the first person that comes to mind when you hear the word successful?
My dad.
If you had 6 months left to live, how would you spend them?
Oh, I would be working. I would probably move from like building this company if I only had 6 months to more of like climate policy and just be like, I have 6 months to live, please do these changes from like a regulatory standpoint.
What lesson did you have to learn the hard way?
That the most important thing about working with people is like making sure that you're value aligned. And that doesn't mean people are good or bad. It just means you think about problems in the same way, or you think about values in the same way.
Oh, so good. Core values. When we drafted our core values for our company, it was like the most satisfying thing ever.
If you're lying, it's like satisfying. If you're not, it's like, ugh.
Yeah, it's horrible. So that's why we said product, market, founder fit.
Yeah.
And what was a major turning point in your life that changed the direction your life was heading?
Definitely when I came to the Bay Area.
Oh, I thought you were going to say when I quit law school, when I didn't pursue law, studying law in Costa Rica.
Well, yeah, that one as well. Maybe this one's more recent. But the thing is, like, I discovered this whole new world when I came to the Bay Area that felt so foreign to me when I was in Canada from like a distance and like mentally as well, that it definitely felt like a turning point.
And it feels like you belong. It feels like you finally found a lot of like high performance people who care about the world, who want to change the world and really take advantage of leverage to do it on a big scale.
I love being surrounded by the people. We had like a couple of Latin founders come for dinner last week, and it was like amazing. It was like El Salvador, Colombia, Guatemala, Brazil, Cuba, and like everyone building different things and having interesting conversations. And it's that moment when you're like, yeah, I belong here.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's amazing. And it's validating too. Like I belong, like you believe it. And it's so good.
Yeah.
So we've come to the final question of the entire episode, which is called the champagne question. Every guest gets this question, and it goes like this.
Okay.
If we were to meet a year from now in person with a bottle of champagne, what are we celebrating in Maricel's life?
Oh, we'll be celebrating our product launch.
And what is the product?
Hopefully we'll drink like half champagne, half coffee, and we can make it like a new drink.
Yes. And what is the product look like for people who are not part of who are not in it? Would it be like
you go to a coffee shop and you ask for a cold brew, and they'll be like, would you like Beanless coffee? And they'll be like, yeah. And they'll be like, we have compound, and they'll like serve it to you on tap, and you'll drink it, and you'll be like, this is the best coffee I've had.
That's amazing. First in San Francisco, or are you looking to do it in the States, Costa Rica, Canada?
It will definitely be in the US. City-wise, we're still thinking through which one is, New York, LA, San Francisco, where would we be? So that's still TBD, but it'll definitely be in the US.
Oh my God. So exciting. Anything that happens, I want to know about it. I want to tell all my followers, we want to follow you, and we want to follow you posting more on Instagram and not feeling like you're bragging because you have a really exciting life, but you deserve it. Like it's a matter of fact, and you've accomplished this. Obviously, you've had incredible parents and incredible people that have helped you along the way, but you deserve all the credit. So proud of you. So happy.
It's so fun.
Yes.
I've actually learned so much. I took notes. It was great.
I think you would. So your homework, Jacqueline Novogratz's episode
and Tim Ferriss
on the Tim Ferriss podcast. Naval, 3-hour episode on how to become.
I read his book, so I think I.
Oh, like okay, the almanac, the Naval almanac.
Yeah.
Okay, 3-hour podcast if you want it, because I've listened. No joke, I've listened to it like 12 times.
Okay, I'll try it.
I'm obsessed with it. And then The E-Myth by Michael E. Gerber. It's like the #1 rated book of small businesses, and you're gonna love it.
And I also have to do my Strengths Finder.
Yes, the Gallup Report and the 16 Personalities. That one is free, 16 Personalities. The Gallup Report is $20. And there's another one called Enneagram or something with a double N. You just Google Enneagram test, and it's very similar to these, but it gives you additional insights. Right. And that, my friend, is how we come to the end.
Amazing.
Of this incredible episode with Maricel. I'm so proud of you. I'm so happy to call you my distant friend. I know we've only seen each other like 3 times in real life, but I've enjoyed following your journey.
I have friends that I have met less than that. So with this virtual world, it'll count. Thank you so much for having me, Stephan, and for your amazing work making people laugh. I think it's so important.
Thank you, Maricel. Big hug. Any closing remarks?
Not really. I'm 4 minutes late to a call.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, Maricel Saenz, Stephan Dyer on the Stephan Dyer Podcast. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, gracias.
Gracias por escuchar el Stephan Dyer Podcast. Arrivederci, my people.